Justin Brown, welcome to the show. Tell the folks out there that may not know you a little bit about yourself.
Well, thanks for having me, Josh. I surely will try. My name is Justin, as you said. Back in 2013, I have a story that I'd like to flesh out as much as possible without taking up a lot of time.
No, go ahead.
So, not a whole lot of experiences fueled my reasoning for getting involved in paranormal research investigation, but I did have them in my early 20s. My mother is a special person. You can call her psychic, you can call her whatever, but she, her and along with her sister grew up in like a 200 plus year old farmhouse here in Southern Ohio. And they had told me the craziest stories that you hear on the internet. Okay. You know, anywhere from balls of light dropping out of the sky and dropping, childlike alien entities, playing with them in their yard, going on, these UFO adventures into space, to seeing ghosts, apparitions, all that type of stuff. My mom and her sister would tell me they experienced as a child. It scared the crap out of me, right?
Nice.
I was not about it. It was scary. It was interesting but scary because I would have to stay at this house, and I was always at the farmhouse, and it just freaked me out. So fast forward to about the early 90s. My mom and dad bought a house in town, which is like 6,000 people, in a town called Hillsboro, Ohio. It's about an hour drive east of Cincinnati, if you're familiar.
Okay.
And they bought the house from a firefighter and a family. He had built the house and raised his two boys with his wife for a while until they got it, maybe into middle school, I think. And they end up selling the house and moving outside of Hillsboro at a farmhouse. And, they rented it for a while until they sold it to my mom and dad. And it was a completely normal house. Nothing happened paranormal at all. About a year later, after he sold us the house, he had an unfortunate suicide where he found out that his wife was cheating on him, and he didn't take that well. So he decided to take his own life, which was strange that right after that, things started happening in the house. Your typical stuff like hearing footsteps up the stairs, having that presence of being watched, all those things.
Right.
So my dad it would drive him crazy trying to figure out who's going up and down the steps. He's thinking that it's got to be me and my brother trying to sneak out of bed or stand up or whatever. And when he'd go investigate it, he could never find us doing it. My mom would tell him, no, it's not the kids, it's the firefighter. And he's like, whatever, that's bullcrap.
Right.
So they would end up being divorced years later, probably when I was around 15, 16 years old. And it was a very abusive, dysfunctional family life that I pretty much endured. Me and my brother did. A lot happened, but we won't get into that. But the haunting, if you want to call it that, increased over time. When you watch the movies, it's not like Poltergeist the movie. It's not how it happens.
Right.
Things can, it could be months before you would see or experience or feel anything, right? So if you fast forward about 10 years, my mom and dad are divorced, and it's just me, my dad, and my now 2-year-old son living at the house. And one day, me and my son are upstairs, and he is too. He's just learning how to talk. He's just, forming sentences so he can, actually carry on a conversation. So he's starting to talk to me at this point. And he's telling me about this guy named John. And I feel like he's talking about my dad because his name's John. So I ask him, are you talking about your grandpa John? And he looks at me plainly and says, no, John R., he's dead. So it just so happens that the firefighter's name is John R. Vance. Okay. So I wish I could just, give justice to the mind screwing job that did to me. All the stories, all the experiences, all the stuff my mom said, everything that I kind of pushed off into that fringe of my awareness. Like all that weird stuff's out there somewhere, but I'm not, I have a barrier to where it can't impact me, right? I have my construct of what I think is real and what I think is going on. All that came crashing down in
Like
that
just
moment.
this crash of this weird cognitive dissonance thing, right? We're just
right.
Like, whoa.
Right.
Wow.
So there was cognitive dissonance there, but the stress immediately transitioned into there is no other possibility than someone had given him information about a man's name that took his life, that his name has not been spoken in over a decade.
Right. And a 2-year-old.
Yes. So he said it so nonchalant that I know that he has been speaking with or communicating or having some kind of relationship with whoever this is. I'm not going to say it was him because I can't prove that, but it was somebody claiming him at the very least. So my life changed. And, you know, that coupled with other experiences later on, I had crazy experiences with poltergeist and like, you know, if you watch the movie Poltergeist, I've seen all that stuff happen in real life. I've seen stuff fly across the room, stuff move on their own. I've seen a penny levitate an inch off a VHS player and rotate 180 degrees and sit back down like it was a UFO. Things flying across the air, TVs come on and off, phones that haven't been plugged in 20 years ringing, just everything, seeing orbs and energy fields and the outlines of shadow people, everything. And even experiencing, you know, what people would call psychic ability. So something's going on in my world.
Right.
So my dad dies in 2011 at the age of 54. 3 months before that, his mom passes away. And then 6 months before he dies, his dad passes.
Mm.
So both his mother and father die, and then he dies all in a 6-month period.
And he died young. That was young.
Yeah, very, very young. His heart exploded at work. He just dropped. He was dead before he hit the ground. So that kind of triple whammy of mortality check there really jarred me. So I just felt like I was next, right? Like I was the next one in line there. So I'm constantly thinking about death, life after death. What is there? You know, I felt like there was a void in my own spiritual toolkit. Like how am I going to cope with this, you know, idea of mortality that you normally don't really focus in on until stuff like that happens, right? So that's right in the middle of paranormal pulp culture, paranormal TV, you know, ghost hunters, ghost adventures are full force at that time. So I'm like, hey, these guys are doing it. I can do it, right? I can go take a recorder out in the woods or into the creepy building and ask the thin air questions. I can do that. So that's how I got started. I just researched the local group. I found some friends from grade school that I knew that were doing it. Jumped in with them. That lasted a whole few months. Got out of that and started doing my own thing because I kind of realized that I was basically needing to go my own route with it. But that's basically my origin story. I mean, there's a whole bunch of details we can get into if you want, but that led me into trying to really, really dig into the idea of what's out there because I already know something's going on, but I don't quite know what it is. So there's ways to look at it, you know, with critical thinking in mind. There's ways to look at it, you know, scientifically. And then there's ways to look at it philosophically and, you know, take a better look at consciousness and the psychic phenomena, you know, and how it is involved in the paranormal because people have paranormal experiences. It seems like it's outside of science. Like science don't understand consciousness. Science doesn't understand a whole bunch of things that I feel like that is related to the paranormal. Right. But with that being said, there's a lot of things that science is looking at, like quantum mechanics, things being at two places at one time, things being entangled and connected against vast distances without any connection or, you know, time lapse in between of exchange of information.
Right. The difference, though, is that when they study quantum physics, they call it science. When we study paranormal, they call it pseudoscience. and they still can't get everything right on dark matter and all that stuff right now either. And, they can't reproduce every single thing like, that they try to say with paranormal. You can't reproduce it in the science. So I just think it's funny that, they kind of blow off a lot of.
There is cynicism involved and there's gatekeeping involved with the scientific community. I mean, you can't debate that really. They could try to debate it, but if Darwin was still alive and he was making money off his theory of evolution and someone came along and completely, dismantled it and found evidence that would, not support his theory, that would cause problems. So you have to closely examine why gatekeeping happens and why people protect certain belief systems and dogmas. You have to be skeptical of those things.
Oh yeah. So, okay. So you realized you had to kind of do your own thing. And then, so that own thing, I want to hear you talk a little bit. You talked a little bit before show of that path you were sort of trying to sort of go down in general. And so I'd like you to talk about that. I think that would be interesting for people to understand where you're trying to go and the direction and what you're trying to pull together.
Mm-hmm. Wow, this is a lot to unpack, but I'm going to try.
That's all right.
We could probably do 100 shows and still not unpack it all. But basically what I saw initially was all the pseudoscience involved with the stuff you see on paranormal TV. I'm not going to bash people, doing ghost hunting as a hobby. I think it's completely fine and moral thing to do. I think people are allowed to go out and have fun and emulate what they see and on TV. It's perfectly fine. But it's not for me. I need some type of effort involved with actually understanding the equipment I'm using, why I'm using it, and understanding the methods I'm using and why I'm doing that. I have an obsession with understanding how things work, or at least trying to be honest about what we don't understand and what we can understand. Because a lot of what we're doing is just anomaly hunting. We don't know how to find evidence of life after death because we don't even know if it exists. So you can't find evidence for things that we don't know exists. You can't do that. Like we can find evidence for things that we know exist by, using science and the scientific method. But since we can't prove that, there's life after death, then science really can't help us. But what science can do is drive us towards, a methodology that uses critical thinking. So if we can eliminate all the things that aren't paranormal, all the methods that can't help us find out if EVP is real, if apparitions are actually being seen and captured, all these things, I feel like if we do that, we can get closer to understanding or at least clearing the misty nature of what we believe the paranormal field is. How do we do that? Knowing how recorders work, knowing what they're good at, what they're not good at, what recorder to use and how to use it, right? How the cameras work, how to use the camera properly. Once I got into the field about 5 years in, I was like, okay, I'm just going to use all my audio engineering background, my photography background, my filmmaking background. I'm going to put all that in there and try to, engage and network with the community and see what happens. Well,
right.
It's rough because mostly what people do is a spiritual practice. Most what people do, they have a belief that you use the term cognitive dissonance. That is a term everybody in the field should know about because psychology is an important thing to know and understand in the paranormal field.
Oh yeah.
Why is that? Well, the one main tool we use is our bodies, our brains, our eyes, our senses. So if you need to use those to figure out what is real and what is true, you need to know what tricks can, be played on your senses, how your mind works, how psychology works, all that. So I went into all that, how to understand psychology, how to understand all the equipment, how to understand that all the stuff we're seeing on TV is just for entertainment. If you really want to investigate and if you really want to research it, seriously, you got to do all those things, which bridges, it creates a wedge in between you and the community that wants to just have fun and wants to fuel their own beliefs rather than challenge their beliefs and look at it objectively. So that's what I'm doing.
And I would interject in there too and just say that you're right. And generally speaking, I've always said that there's about like 4 levels of investigating, right? You got like your just basic ghost hunting stuff. Then you can kind of go the notch up. And I start talking about when you get into actual paranormal investigations, which in my opinion are when you're actually trying to help people. It doesn't necessarily have to be full on scientific. It's more of a spiritual journey, more of helping people, sometimes psychology or debunking a lot of things. And then, but ultimately you're going to get up to that 4th level, which could be straight up just like science. Like you're not really involved in any kind of entertainment. You're not out trying to really per se have fun at ghost hunting type stuff. You're
zero fun.
Right. Like, and that highest level is for people, maybe even yourself, if you consider yourself like in that highest level of like, hey, I'm trying to take the scientific route the best I can. And that's my passion. And some people, like I said, some people are more scientists, some people are more entertainers, and some people are more thrill seekers. It just in a little bit of everything. Just like I tell people all the time, like, look, I do a show. I don't fake things. That's what holds me back. If I fake things, I probably would be even higher up on the ladder when it comes to the world of paranormal and popularity. But it's not a popularity contest. I enjoy doing the shows and having it be as entertaining as possible. But I'm not trying to pass it off as this is facts. I caught something for sure. This is science here. And I'm not trying to prove those things. So I think there's a place for all that. I think in your case, I can see what you're talking about, because in the paranormal world, a lot of people want that entertainment. They want to believe. They want an illusion sometimes. And sometimes debunking and science can break those illusions, and people are just like, I can't handle that. I can't, no, I want to believe that my, this and that. It just can cause rifts, even though your mission is very positive, in my opinion. Like, you are really trying to get down to some scientific answers.
Right. I always say that when you're watching a show or even a podcast, whatever it is, you're trying to take a break from the grind of your work, your day job, or whatever you do. You're trying to escape in those times. And you don't need Justin, the science guy, telling you that your brain is working against you and everything that you believe is wrong. You know what I'm saying? So, and when you spent, $10,000-$20,000 on all your gear to go to Waverly Hills Sanitarium, you're wanting to have fun, and you're wanting to escape from your grind, and you're wanting to do a hobby. But when you start to get serious about it, it's really work. And when you look at it for what it is, it's the hardest thing that anybody would ever do, is to try to answer these questions we're looking at.
Oh yeah. And it's almost like the task of literally trying to science it is very, very difficult. And that's why I commend you on your efforts. And I think, what would you say out of your experience? How would you define, now again, this is, let's say, non-scientific, right? Let's just go with your gut. Let's go with your observations, just you being in the field. And as you say, the witness to things. What to you is the most solid, I would say, evidence for yourself that there's something beyond?
Other than my son telling me the names of dead people?
Yes. I mean, but what for you, has there even been something solid for you? Have you?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Oh yeah. The experiences.
Right. So what do you think? What's the best for you?
Seeing things levitate, seeing, okay, I'm going to tell you a story. So I am living in my first son I have with a woman before I was married to Christy. I have 2 kids with Christy. I have my oldest son with a woman I did not marry, that I was dating before my wife now. And I lived at her brother's house, my first son's mother's brother's house. here in Hillsborough, and there's seemingly nothing weird about it. But when I moved in, everybody was telling me that they had been experiencing this ghost of the house. And my the brother of this girlfriend I had was an extreme alcoholic, and he would get drunk in fits of rage and just like spout off at this entity and like challenge it, and it would throw things. It was a full-on poltergeist case. Like if you would look at a classic parapsychology, poltergeist case, this was it.
Right.
So fixing food at the stove, barbells would roll across the room and hit me, TV on and off. Okay. So one night I'm trying to sleep in a guest bedroom and I can't sleep. I can't figure out why. So I'm tossing and turning it. And then I never felt this quite intense before. I feel like I'm being watched. Like there is someone in the room right now. So I flip on the light, look, no one there. I'm like, huh. So that goes on about an hour. Then I start hearing a low frequency hum, like a electrical noise, right?
Right.
So I'm like, what's that? I look outside. I'm trying to find like the transformer that's buzzing. I'm trying to find a receptacle or something electrical. Nothing. And this thing won't let me sleep, whatever it is. I know it's something, but I can't see it. So I would get fed up 4 or 5 in the morning. I would pack up the girlfriend and my youngest boy and head to my mom's, which is in an adjacent county. And I would stay there. This went on about 3 nights. So I got fed up and I just stayed up there. I was done. So I'm already used to being up all night. So I'm watching TV at like, 10, 11 o'clock at night. And my girlfriend's like, there's someone outside looking at me through the window. And we're in the middle of nowhere, Ohio, dude. Cornfields for miles, pig farms. I'm like, there's no way there's anybody out there. So I go out there. Nope, no one's out there. Go back to sleep. Next night, same thing, same exact time. So I'm like, okay, I go in there and I flip on this lamp and the lamp's not bright. So it's very dim in the room, but I can see what looks like you're looking through water. There is some type of wavy diffraction of light in this mass floating like this in the middle of the room. So I'm like, oh, what the hell? That's weird. And before I can question it any further, my mom told me a story of these orbs of light that would fly through the field and freak out the dog. And they would come into the house. And I thought she was crazy. Her story, she's so many stories, dude. I can sit here and tell you 4 weeks about this stuff. Okay.
Right.
So I'm thinking it's typical mom. She's crazy, right? Well, no, here comes the orbs. They flood into the room, dozens of them. They start encircling this thing, and it seemed like it neutralizes it. All right. It stops floating up and down, and then it moves past me out of the room and to the right through the doorway where I can't see it. And then after a second, it comes back in partially and peeks at me and then goes away. Kind of like saying, hey, are you coming?
Right.
Without saying it. So I go out there, turn to my right, go into the kitchen, and then I see it float into my mom's room. So I follow it, and it's there hovering in my mom's room. So I say, well, this is my opportunity to step into this thing to see if it's actually something. Right. So I step into it, and it feels like a hot and cold, like you just dipped your whole body into a vat of icy hot. And it's that static charge all over me. Everyone's that's been to places or have had experiences with those things knows what I'm talking about. It feels like spider webs that you just walk through. It's exactly like that. And then it just dissipated. And of course, my mom had somebody come over. They cleansed the house and sent it back to where it came from down in Hillsborough. And the rest is history. But that right there, after talking to the other roommates down the house, telling me they saw the exact same thing without me telling them, collaborating, all of it, just tells me without having some scientists pop onto PBS saying, yep, ghosts are real, God's real, all this stuff, angels, demons, and everything in between's real. You can go to bed tonight. I don't need that because there's no way to explain. Science cannot touch this.
Right.
And the reason why is the brain is an antenna, and it sometimes the bandwidth that it receives gets larger, and you will feel, see, and experience things within a much larger bandwidth.
Have you got into like the the brain frequencies,
Oh yeah,
and shooting.
I've been down every rabbit hole you can possibly imagine.
Yeah, I just was throwing that out there because I figured you had, and just to tell the viewers too. It's I think that's what you were kind of alluding to without going into details, was that sort of spiritual network of frequencies and things between your head.
Yeah, I got a hold of, not too much longer after that, I got a hold of a brainwave generator using audio frequencies, and I was able to induce rapid eye movement and see things and increase psychic phenomena quite a bit. But it freaked me out, so I stopped doing it and never done it since.
Well, you might have to talk about that another time too, because that'd be pretty cool. I'll have to talk about some of that too. I love those type of experiments sometimes, but no, I think for me, over all the years and all the investigations and all the places I've been to, I think for me now, I will say out of all the equipment, I'm very much I've rarely had photos that I kind of like. I always chalk it up to matrixing, things like that. Video, I've had a few over the years. I've had some dark shadows that's kind of blocked out some light sources and things like that. But I will say the thing that I've had the most, in my opinion, of the closest evidence possible is EVPs. Now, I'm also very picky on my EVPs. I don't necessarily like to hear Class C or even like Class B EVPs and then just say, oh, that's definitely something. I do feel like there can be some of that pareidoia and stuff in there as well. But when I get words and I get Class A or even some decent side of Class B, I gotta say, I feel like that I've been in controlled environments, my own home, where all the power was turned off, and I've told this story in the past. I'm not going to go into details, but I've shut down my whole house, did EVP sessions, and had children and adult male yelling on the recording.
Have you caught one doing a live stream yet?
I'm not sure, to be honest with you. I don't think I've had any.
Would you like? I have a clip on one of my shows of the craziest, clearest voice. If you want to check it out.
Oh, we'll have to definitely check that out for sure. I'll have to check it out for sure because again, like I said, it's and I had one that I've got a special little behind the scenes, like Paraflix actually reached out to me and they were like, they questioned it. Like, not to question my integrity because they knew that I don't fake stuff. But the CEO was like, because I have a series on Paraflix. So the CEO came in and she heard the CVP and was like, is that real? Like, it was because this woman was laughing. It was such a loud laugh. And it was caught not only on the main camera, it was caught on the H1N Zoom recorder that was on the mantle. And her volume is louder than me and the other investigator.
It's probably a disembodied voice then. It wasn't an EVP.
Well, and I just call it an EVP. But yeah, she's laughing and it was on both devices. So I timestamped. I did a behind the scenes thing, but it was so good. And it was clearly a woman and sends chills. Whenever you hear them, when you're reviewing your evidence and you hear a voice, you hear a word, you hear somebody say something and it's something and not just a,
right.
I don't like the stupid ones like the, I want, like, when I hear something and it's like, oh my God, then the hair stand up on the back of your neck and you're like, and that's been, to me, that's been the most solid out of video and pictures and all that stuff. Audio, for some reason, it seems as if spirits can manipulate the white noise, and you can tell, like, anybody that listens to enough audio, just like I'm sure you can vouch for this. When you're listening in your headphones and you're listening and you're reviewing, there's like these layers and you can hear the white noise, and when you hear that spirit, it's as if it's using the white noise to communicate versus somebody, when you have, and I've experimented with this, as I'm sure you have, when you have somebody whisper something in a room, just as an experiment, you're like, hey, whisper something, I'm dead, whatever. You have them say something, and then when you listen to it, it sounds like it's in the room. It sounds like it's a different layer. It's not like an EVP. So that's why I'm a very big fan of actual EVPs, if you know what I mean.
Yep. I've nerded out for years over the audio aspect of things. And it seems like that's the most prominent anomaly that we are able to get, because the visual stuff isn't as prominent. There's something with how light interacts with what we're thinking is there is not, as prevalent, or doesn't work as far as how things manifest quite as well as voice phenomena. What's more intriguing to me is hearing the voice without anything, with just your naked ears, recording it. Sure, great, you have validation of it, but it's vibrating the air in the atmosphere for you to hear. How's it doing that, right? How is it moving things physically? How is whatever it is interacting with our physical reality?
Right.
Energy, right? There's some type of energy field doing this. And I actually find, because I have very complex, complicated audio setups to determine if it's, electronic voice phenomena or what, just regular, acoustic energy, which is, vibrating the air, to the point where the transducers and the microphones can pick them up, because they're designed to induce a signal that's created by compression waves in the air. That's how mics work. And it's, transduced into an electric signal, and voila, you can either amplify it and play it over a PA or record it on some type of media. But what I have found, that 99.9% of everything I've recorded is all acoustic energy. What's strange is we don't hear most of it. And a lot of people will say, well, it's probably the frequency. And I'm like, no. Any audio engineer will tell you the human hearing range is pretty obvious. 20, kilohertz to 20,000 if you're young, and it diminishes as you get older. So if something is below 20 or above 20K, you're not hearing it. Even if it's on a recording, you're just not hearing it because you can't. It's physically impossible.
Right.
So why can't you? There's two theories that I have. One is you're filtering it out. The joke about the husband having selective hearing,
right?
The wife. That's a real thing when it comes to everything we're perceiving all the time. Okay. We hear a very small percentage of what's going on. We even pay attention or even conscious to only a minute portion of what's going on. When you're driving, you can zone out and not really pay attention to anything. If your daily commute, you're on autopilot, all this stuff going on, you don't know what's going on. People are talking in the background, these noise and the fans in the background. You're not conscious of it unless we mention it, right? So I have a recording of my mom hearing something at a location that I'm investigating and filming, and she turns to me and asks me if I'm hearing it. I'm like, no, I don't hear it. On the playback, it's plain as day, but it's on all the audio equipment. It's redundant through all the lav mics and the shotgun mics, so it's acoustic energy. It's in the air. So why didn't I hear it? Well, the theory is that we're not always conscious, either through the normal mechanism of how our consciousness works and senses work, or maybe we're protecting ourselves. Maybe we could be filtering out some things. On the other side of it, there could be some phenomena that's more like, it's there's a term in audio engineering. It's where if something's played, or if there's an audio that's at like 21,000 hertz, but you're sampling it at a rate of 11 K, it's I'll come up with the term with it later. It's escaping me now, but you can use the octave down and sample it and hear it where you couldn't normally hear it with your ears because it's above the range.
Right.
But it's interesting to think that there is audio that we can only hear through our recorders or even our ears if it's at a different frequency because of math. Okay. Because of the frequency ranges and octaves and how that works. It gets nerdy, so I won't go into it, but there's science behind it. There's ways to look at it logically to make sense of why we can't hear, and then we're hearing it on recorders. But the whole psychic thing, I don't want to leave this portion of the show without touching on the psi behind all of this. Okay. I feel like everyone has psi ability. It's a completely natural thing, whether it's been, de-evolved of our species, or some people have it, some people don't. It's there. Okay.
I agree.
Magnetic senses. Animals use magnetic senses. I have theories behind why people see shadow figures. If you look into Cry4 and why insects and birds can see the magnetic field lines to navigate true north, they can see it because of quantum mechanics of Cry4 proteins in their eye. Humans have it, but they're low, and you can only see such phenomena at low light. So that's why birds fly and navigate early morning times, because they can see the field lines. Anyway, the psi ability is got to be the main thing we need to look at. Consciousness and how we're able to use some sense outside the five to perceive these things, whether it be dreams, prophetic dreams, whether it be that gut feeling that you have, whether it be whatever, sight, feeling something, getting that download from the universe, telling you something, to whatever it is. I feel like the more we understand the psi phenomena, the more we'll understand what hauntings are, what
absolutely
paranormal phenomena is.
Absolutely. And to even back you up even further, when you look back at some of the very first written history of the first cultures, like the Sumerians, for example, and I just talked about this, I think even on the last podcast, but I wanted to use it, a little bit of it to back you up. And they talked about in some of the very first written text of, when humans were writing cuneiforms and tablets, right? The very first written history of the Sumerians and stuff, they were talking about ghosts and demons. They were seeing them everywhere. So as you were talking about, maybe things had diminished. Well, we have written histories where we visually were seeing these things. Like commonly, we had the sight a lot, at least thousands of years ago, right? So maybe over time, as you say, that selective hearing, selective sight, over time, people just kind of, as they conquered, because they were getting into casts and or spells and rituals, and they were combating things too. So maybe as they sort of defeated some of these ghosts and demons over time, we stopped having a need to see them, and we didn't want to see them, and we started to stop seeing them.
How many cases have you been involved with where young children are seeing things?
Oh yeah, all the time.
But at certain ages, it goes away, or near-death experiences. And I'm not dear.
Reincarnation.
Reincarnation. Sorry, the young children.
2 to 5 years old is the range.
Are we just basically programming it out of our minds because of our materialist beliefs?
Well, and I think they were talking about, is it Dr. Jim Baker, the University of Virginia, was studying that with reincarnation, and was finding a lot of kids 2 to 5, once they start school, they start school in their minds. It's the same thing. When we look back, we hardly have any memories past kindergarten or anything like that, but once we start getting involved socially, school and all that, there's this other consciousness that seems to, and you start fading memories. Now, whether or not you're reincarnated, an actual soul reincarnation, or whether you're spirit body reincarnation, I think there's a difference as well. I believe in spirit body reincarnation. I think we're all our own unique souls, so I don't think our souls get reincarnated, but I have a lot of evidence to show that there's potential for spirit body. I actually talk about it in my book. So have you wrote a book yet?
Not yet.
Oh, you got to write a book. Everybody that follows Justin, pressure him to write his book. Got to write his book.
I have a problem. I don't know if I'm able to write a book that people are going to want to read that's between 600 to 1,000 pages, because the book I want to write is probably bigger than Token's work.
Just write it. Just take a little look.
I don't want to write something that someone will look at me like, no.
No. Just
Josh,
take
they're going to say no
Take a
to
little
a
bit,
trillion
like
pages.
20 minutes a day or something set aside.
Oh, I don't have an excuse. My problem is like dialing it back and just writing something that, you know, people are going to want to read through and actually get something from. That's what I need to figure out.
Just write it, and then we'll see. I'm telling you.
You're
But
right.
guys, get them to do it. Get them to do it.
Yes. Just nag me every day.
I'm shameless promotion. My Paranormal, A Guide to the Spirit Realms. That's my book. It's like,
well, the first books I would probably write is
200 pages. It's
just
like
talking about, people would probably be really interested in the stories of my experiences.
Right.
And, you know, my mother's a whole entire novel series, dude. My mom.
Talk about the beginnings, and then another book, talk about your theories. You know, I mean, you can break them up, but I'm just telling you, you need to do it. You need to do it. You're a smart guy, and you got a lot of stories, and there's no reason why you can't. So, and you could put that on your resume, because you have a long list of accomplishments that you're racking up, and you know, you can make yourself an international selling author. So just do it. Just do it. I'm pushing you on that one.